In 2019, a woman named Maya sat across from her boyfriend in the restaurant where they'd had their first date and handed him a business plan she'd spent 4 months writing. He read every page. Then he looked up at her and said, "This is the best idea I've ever seen. Let's build it together." By 2022, the business was worth $4.2 million. By 2023, he had married someone else, his assistant, at a ceremony that Maya found out about through a LinkedIn notification. She didn't cry. She didn't call him. She didn't post anything. She opened her laptop, created a new folder, and named it Project Quiet. What happened inside that folder, over the next 18 months, is one of the most methodical, satisfying, and completely legal comebacks I have ever had the privilege of telling. Before we get into what Maya did, I need you to understand who Maya was, because this story only makes sense when you understand exactly what she brought to that relationship. Maya was not a supporting character in someone else's story. She was, by every measure, the architect. She had a master's degree in business administration. She had 5 years of experience in brand strategy. Before she ever met Daniel, she had the connections, the creative vision, and the operational mind that turned his vague idea into a company that clients actually paid real money to work with. Daniel had the charisma and the audacity, which, as it turns out, are sometimes enough to make people forget who did the actual work. This is not a story about a woman who was wronged and fell apart. This is a story about a woman who was wronged, and then quietly, methodically, completely dismantled everything that had been built on her labor and rebuilt it somewhere he couldn't touch it. Let's go back to the beginning. Maya met Daniel at an industry networking event in 2017. He was charming, well-dressed, full of ideas, the kind of person who could make you feel like the most important person in the room. When he talked to you, she was immediately drawn to his energy. What she didn't realize until much later was that energy was the entirety of his contribution to almost everything he touched. They dated for 8 months before she showed him the business plan. A boutique brand consultancy, helping mid-sized companies redesign their market positioning. It was specific, it was needed, and Maya's framework for it was genuinely unlike anything else in the space at the time. Daniel loved it. More importantly, Daniel loved that she wanted to do it with him. "You're the brain," he told her once. "I'm the face. We're unstoppable together." She believed him. For the first year, they worked out of her apartment. Maya handled everything operational: the service design, the client delivery frameworks, the pricing model, the onboarding process. Daniel handled new business, pitching, networking, closing deals. It was genuinely a good division of labor. By the end of year 1, they had 8 clients and just over $300,000 in annual revenue. Maya's name was not on the website. Daniel had suggested keeping it clean, just the company name. She agreed. She trusted him. By year 2, they'd moved into a real office, hired for employees. Daniel hired an assistant named Priya, young, ambitious, good at managing Daniel's increasingly chaotic schedule. Maya noticed that Daniel talked about Priya a lot. She told herself it was nothing. By year 3, revenue had crossed $2 million. They'd won 2 industry awards. A regional business publication ran a profile on Daniel, calling him the visionary behind one of the fastest growing brand consultancies in the region. Maya was quoted once in the 3rd paragraph as a key member of the leadership team. She raised it with Daniel that night. He said, "Babe, you know how much of this is you. The journalist just wanted a founder angle. It doesn't mean anything." She let it go. By year 4, the business was valued at $4.2 million. They had 16 employees. They'd signed their largest client to date, a $600,000 annual contract that Maya had personally pitched, built the proposal for, and closed. 2 weeks after that contract was signed, Daniel asked Maya to take a step back from client-facing work, to focus on internal operations. She thought it was a reasonable request. The company was scaling. Someone needed to manage the back end. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already started telling clients that Priya was his business partner, and that he had already started planning a wedding. Maya found out about the engagement the way nobody should ever find out about anything important. A LinkedIn notification. Daniel has updated his relationship status and life event. Below it was a photo of Daniel and Priya. A ring. A caption that said, "The next chapter begins." So grateful. Maya stared at her phone for a long time. She told me later that the strangest part wasn't the rage or the grief. Those came later. The strangest part was how quiet she felt. Like something inside her had gone completely still. She called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring, which told her he'd been expecting the call. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. He said he was sorry for how she found out. He said they'd grown apart. He said he hoped they could be professional about things, since they were still technically business partners. Business partners. That was the first moment the quiet inside Maya turned into something else, something colder, because she realized, in that 11-minute phone call, that Daniel genuinely believed. He held all the cards. He believed the company was his. He believed the client relationships were his. He believed the reputation was his. He had spent 4 years putting his name on everything, and her name on nothing, and he had done it so consistently that he had started to believe his own version of the story. Maya thanked him for his honesty. She said she would think about next steps. She hung up. Then she called her lawyer, and she opened a new folder on her desktop and named it Project Quiet. What most people don't know about betrayal is that the people who survive it best are the ones who treat the first 72 hours not as an emotional event, but as an information-gathering exercise. Maya spent those 72 hours doing 3 things. First, she pulled every document she had ever created for the business, every strategy deck, every client proposal, every framework document, every email chain where she had originated an idea that later appeared in Daniel's name. 4 years of paper trail sitting in her personal Google Drive, time-stamped and attributed. The business plan she'd written in 2019, the one she'd handed him at the restaurant, was still in that drive, written entirely in her name, date-stamped 4 months before the company was incorporated. Second, she met with an attorney who specialized in business disputes. The attorney reviewed her partnership agreement, or rather what passed for one, because Daniel had always insisted they didn't need formal documents between people who trust each other. There was no formal partnership agreement, no equity split documentation, no operating agreement. For Daniel, this had seemed like a protection. He assumed it meant he owned everything. What it actually meant was that Maya had a viable claim to a significant ownership stake in a company she had demonstrably helped create, and virtually no contractual restriction on her next move. Third, she quietly reached out to 3 of the company's largest clients, not to say anything, just to reconnect, to check in, to remind them that she existed, and that she had been the person they actually worked with on most of their projects. The responses she got back told her everything. 2 of the 3 immediately asked if she was still with the company. One of them said, "And I want you to hear this carefully. Honestly, Maya, between us, we've been a bit concerned. Daniel seems stretched thin. Priya is nice, but she doesn't really understand what we need. If you were ever to go out on your own, I think we'd have a conversation." Maya replied professionally. She said nothing committal. She thanked them and got off the call. Then she opened Project Quiet and started building a business plan, a real one, the second one she'd ever written. And this time, it had only her name on it. Over the next 6 months, Maya operated on 2 tracks simultaneously. Track 1. She remained at the company. Professional, competent, unremarkable. She did her work. She attended meetings. She gave Daniel no reason to suspect anything. Track 2. After hours, she was building. She registered a new LLC, sole proprietorship, her name only. She designed a service model that was an evolution of the framework she'd originally created in 2019. More refined, more specialized. She'd had 4 years of real-world data to improve it. She built a website quietly, reached out to 2 former colleagues who had left Daniel's company. In the past year, both of whom had left, she learned, because of concerns about how the company was being managed. Both said yes when she asked if they'd be interested in something new. She began having informal conversations with potential clients, always framed as general industry conversations, never as pitches. Not yet. At month 4 of the quiet build, something happened that she hadn't anticipated. Daniel's largest client, the $600,000 account that Maya had personally closed, came up for annual renewal. Daniel sent Priya to handle the renewal meeting. Maya heard about this through one of the employees. 3 days later, that client called Maya directly, on her personal cell phone, the number they'd been calling for 4 years, when they actually needed something done. The call lasted 45 minutes. By the end of it, they had agreed in principle to move their account to Maya's new firm, the moment their current contract expired, which was in 60 days. Maya thanked them. She added it to Project Quiet. Then she called her attorney again. It was time to accelerate the timeline. At month 5, she had 3 confirmed clients ready to move. Combined annual value, just under $900,000. More than the revenue Daniel's company had generated in its entire first year. At month 6, she resigned. 2 weeks' notice. Professional email. No drama. No accusations. Just, I've decided to pursue an independent direction. I appreciate the opportunity. I wish the company well. Daniel's response was a single line. Understood. HR will be in touch about the transition. He genuinely thought she was going to go freelance. Maybe pick up some small projects. He had no idea. None of them ever do. Maya's firm launched publicly on a Tuesday morning, with a press release, a clean website, and 3 client case studies, all built from work she had done before, reframed around her individual contributions. By Friday of that week, 2 more former clients of Daniel's company had reached out asking for meetings. Within the first 90 days of operation, Maya's firm had 6 clients and $1.1 million in contracted annual revenue. She had 2 employees, the 2 colleagues she'd quietly recruited during the quiet build. She was profitable in month 2. Now here is where the story gets, as I promised you at the beginning, brutal. Not because Maya did anything malicious. She didn't. What she did was simply continue to be exceptional at her work, with her name on it this time. The brutal part is what happened to Daniel's company when the clients started leaving. In the 12 months after Maya's departure, Daniel's company lost 4 of its top 6 clients. 3 went to Maya's firm directly. 1 went to a competitor. His annual revenue dropped from $2.1 million to under $800,000. He had to let go of 6 employees. The company's industry reputation, which had been built almost entirely on the quality of work that Maya and her team had produced, began to reflect the work that remained, which was not the same. Daniel called Maya 8 months after her departure. She let it go to voicemail. He called again 2 weeks later. She let that one go too. On his 3rd attempt, she picked up. He wanted to know if she'd consider a consulting arrangement, if her firm would be willing to take on his company as a client, to help stabilize their delivery process. I want you to sit with that for a moment. He was asking the woman he had replaced, whose work he had claimed as his own for 4 years, whose name he had kept off the website, whose idea had founded the entire company. He was asking her to save it. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Send me your current client list and revenue figures. I'll have my team assess whether it's a good fit for us." She paused. Then she added, "We're quite selective about the accounts we take on. But I appreciate you thinking of us." She never called him back. I've thought a lot about what makes Maya's story different from other comeback stories, because there are 100 versions of this narrative, where the person who was wronged spends their energy trying to expose the person who wronged them, trying to make sure everyone knows what happened, trying to make the betrayer feel what they made them feel. Maya did none of that. She spent zero energy on Daniel. Every single thing she did after that LinkedIn notification was directed entirely forward, toward building, toward documenting what was already hers, toward positioning herself to do better work. In a context where she got the credit for it, the market took care of the rest, because markets don't care about narratives. They care about who actually delivers. And when Daniel no longer had Maya's work to deliver, the market noticed. There's a version of this story that ends with a lawsuit, with a public exposure, with a dramatic confrontation. This is not that version. This version ends with Maya in a corner office of a building she leases under her own name, with a team she built, with a client list that speaks for itself, and with a folder on her desktop, still named Project Quiet, because that's the name she keeps for every new challenge now. Not because she's still angry, because she learned something in those 18 months that most people never figure out. The loudest revenge is a life. That makes it obvious to everyone watching exactly who was carrying who. If the story resonated with you, if you've ever been the person doing the work, while someone else got the credit, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in your story. And if you want to see more stories like this one, you know where the subscribe button is. New story every week. Quiet revenge.